Good morning to all of our wonderful clients. Kieran here from Metro Village. Now I'm recording this session today to provide you as much information and knowledge as possible about the Renters' Rights Act 2025, to give you key insights into the current market conditions around sales and lettings, well equipped with that information. Now, I'd like to say thank you for all of your support and trust in us to look after your portfolio. We're here to help. We're here to overcome any difficulties that the change brings. Now let's dive in. The Act received royal assent on the 27th of October this year. It's described as the biggest overhaul we would have seen in the private rented sector in decades. The biggest change that we'd have probably seen since the Housing Act 1988. Now it's designed to give renters more stability and security whilst raising standards for landlords and letting agents. Now let's look at the implementation timeline. What changes happen and when they occur. It's not all immediate. The Act will be introduced into phases. Now, phase 1 will be 2 days. Firstly, the 27th of December 2025, local authorities will get expanded inspection and investigatory powers over landlords and letting agents. Then the big date that everyone's talking about is the 1st of May 2026. This is when all ASTs convert to periodic tenancies. Fixed term tenancies are abolished for new and existing tenancies. Section 21 no-fault evictions will end. Reformed grounds for possession under Section 8 become the basis for any eviction. Limits on rent in advance, rent increase rules, ban on rental bidding, and discrimination protections all kick in. Local authority enforcement powers, rent repayment orders will be strengthened. Now, phase 2, we're expecting somewhere late 2026. This will be the introduction of the new private rented sector landlord database and a private rented sector ombudsman and redress scheme. All landlords and letting agents will be required to register and join. And finally, phase 3. This timing is to be confirmed, but we're expecting this to be somewhere around 2027. This will be the rollout of the full decent home standard to private rental properties. Okay, so let's talk about each section in a little bit more detail. Now, I think one of the biggest talking points has been the abolishment of Section 21. Currently, in England, if you're a landlord and you're looking to get your property back, you don't currently have to give any real valid reason under a Section 21. You can simply serve the notice, which is 2 months, and request your property back. Now, a lot of landlords tend to do this if, for example, they're looking to sell the property, or they're looking to move back in, or potentially move family members into the property, or if they've maybe got a tenant that, let's say hasn't quite been the best tenant. Maybe there's been some antisocial behaviour. Maybe they're always delayed in paying their rent, or maybe they're just not looking after the property very well. You currently, as long as you're not in a fixed term contract, if you're coming to the end of that fixed term contract, or you're currently periodic, which could be statutory or contractual periodic, you can just serve a Section 21 notice, 2 months notice, and the tenant will be asked to vacate. And if they don't, then you can start legal proceedings, go to court, and because it's a Section 21, the judge will award you possession. That will change from the 1st of May 2026. Now, it will be much more difficult for you as a landlord to get your property back. Now, I know some landlords who like to use their London property over the summer months, and therefore they have a shorter contract which enables them to serve notice and come and visit over the summer. That will be very, very difficult under the new Act. If you're a landlord that wants to sell your property, you'll need to give a tenant 4 months notice, and the tenant would have had to have lived there for at least 12 months. That means serving notice on month 8, giving the tenant 4 months notice to vacate, and if they don't vacate, then you can start legal proceedings. Let's also talk about the current situation with rent arrears. Now, if a tenant is in rent arrears, you can serve a Section 8 notice to provide them 2 weeks notice to vacate once they are 2 months in rent arrears. Now, under the new Act, this will be extended, which means that you'll need to wait 3 months. The tenant will need to be in 3 months worth of rent arrears before you can serve the correct notice on that tenant. And that notice has been extended from 2 weeks to 4. Therefore, 3 months of the tenant not paying any rent, and at that point, you can then serve 4 weeks notice for the tenant to vacate. And as of the 1st of May 2026, all new tenancies and existing tenancies will be a periodic tenancy immediately. Now, what does that mean? That will mean that a tenant can move into a property, and then after they've lived at the property for a full month, they can providing it's on the rent due date, they can provide a landlord 2 months notice to leave. So potentially we could have a higher turnover of tenants. I don't think that will be the case, but I think it's really important for landlords to make sure that their property is in its best possible condition, and maintenance are dealt with quickly, because the importance of keeping a tenant in the property for long-standing, long-term investment will be the healthiest way for you to act. The ban of accepting more than 1 month's rent in advance from tenant. Now, often we have, in our area, in London particularly, you've got international students that tend to pay 6 to 12 to even potentially 2 years. And I've had it in the past 3 years rent in advance. Now, unfortunately, under the Act, that will be banned, which means that it becomes more difficult to reference a tenant who normally would pass because they're paying rent in advance, and therefore we cannot get the rent guarantee insurance that we need for you to protect your income. So as of the 1st of May, no more rent in advance will be allowed, which will make a change to the way that the market operates. Another key talking point is rent increases. Now, again, as it stands at the moment, when a contract comes to the end of its fixed term, we handle a renewal of contract for you. And at that point, we're negotiating the best possible rent for you in line with the current market value. Now, how things will change from the 1st of May will be that rents can only be increased once per year, and that will have to be done via what's called a Section 13 notice. Now, that Section 13 notice will need to also provide evidence to the tenant that the rent that is being increased by is in line with the current market value. Tenants have the right to take that decision to what's called a first tier tribunal. If they decide to do that, the rent that we've requested to be increased by will not kick in until a decision has been made at tribunal. Now, our concern and worry with this is that tenants will almost be encouraged to take this to a tribunal because the rent will not be backdated. So let's say we increase the rent on the 1st of June. A tenant decides that they're not happy with that rent increase. They're going to take it to a first tier tribunal. We then have to wait for that process to happen. And what our also concern is that that process potentially could take 3 to 6 to 9 months. And in that time, the rent will be continued to be paid at the agreed amount previously decided. And if, for example, in 3 to 6 to 9 months' time, the rent has been awarded to the landlord, the tenants do not need to backdate that payment. So it will start in that time frame. The right for a tenant to request a pet. Again, this has been a big talking point. Now, unless a landlord can prove or evidence that a pet is not allowed in the property, now some head leases will stipulate no pets allowed or no dogs allowed. But if it doesn't, and they can't evidence a true reason why that tenant shouldn't be allowed a pet, then unfortunately we cannot decline that request. So that's been a big talking point and something that I will come on to in a little bit more detail over the next couple of videos that I produce. We have the ban on achieving more than advertised rent when marketing a property. Now, this one has come in, which to be honest is surprising, because it's basically avoiding rental bidding, trying to make it more transparent and fair for a tenant. Now, how that will work is that if we're marketing a property, let's say it's a property at £2,000 a month, our normal process, our current process that we've been working with for some years now is an offers over approach. It allows tenants to come in and look at the property. We may then secure 2 or 3 offers and ask tenants to basically tell us what they're prepared to pay for it, what's their best and final offer. And probably 8 to 9 times out of 10, we get offers over the amount that it's marketed at. Unfortunately, that will change, and we will no longer be allowed to accept an offer higher than what the property price is marketed at. So that's a big one, I think. So the market in 2025 has been, in London particularly, a very challenging one. We are seeing some signs of improvement, But what I think we're faced with over the next 12 months is changes to legislation, which is going to impact landlords that are potentially looking to exit the market. What that will do is provide less property on the rental market, which I can only really see personally rents increasing next year. I think rents will increase, which obviously will affect tenants, but it will help landlords with the rising costs that they've had over the last 2 to 3 years. Some real positive signs are that we're seeing interest rates come down, especially post-budget. I've read a lot of articles and looked at a lot of videos that are suggesting that we're going to see another base rate cut next week. And also we're seeing lenders now almost competing with each other for business. So that's a real positive sign. And I think now is more, it's never been so important for you as a landlord to look at your options and potentially look at ways of restructuring your portfolio. This year, the lettings market has at times been more difficult. We've definitely seen a shift in the market for the last 2 to 3 years. We have seen slightly less demand, and certain properties have found it harder to find tenants at the rents they were expecting or potentially achieving. But I think as we go into 2026, we're going to see that shift, and we're going to see an improved lettings market. So I actually think now is a real good time to look at your portfolio. We can have a one-to-one call where we can outline what our goals are within the portfolio or within that rental property for you over the next year to 2 years, and look at potentially restructuring options as well. So we're here to help, and there's a lot of change coming, but we are geared up for that change. We've been working on this for several months, and the systems and the processes and the platforms that we work with are ready for the change. Now let's talk about the sales market. Now that's been a very challenging market for us over the past 12 months. There's so many difficulties in the market at the moment. That might be high interest rates, low demand, property prices in London reducing. But most importantly, I think something that gets overlooked is the issue around the Building Safety Act and leasehold property. So there's been so many challenges for us to overcome. And, I'm having regular meetings with development managers that are dealing with Building Safety Act concerns and issues that are affecting properties from selling. We're kind of coming to the end of that now. There is still a little way to go. But I think once those complications are dealt with, we'll see an improvement in the sales market, especially as I was saying, with interest rates coming down and now maybe an influx of first-time buyers coming to the market. So since the budget, we actually sold 7 properties in 10 days, which is extremely positive. Given the time of year, it tends to be a lot slower in December. But the first week of December has actually been our busiest week in sales. So that's exciting, and long may that continue into 2026. Now, today's video has been a brief overview of the Renters' Rights Act, and obviously it's to kind of let you know that we're here to help. We're working on this and give you information about what's coming. Some of it I think will be really positive for the rental market. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the next couple of years in the London market, providing we look at those options now. So, I think it's key for us to potentially look at getting a call booked in the near future. But also, we're going to be running a Renters' Rights Act webinar where I'm going to go into much more detail around what's coming on the 1st of May. So I'll keep you updated about that and let you know when that's going to be. It's most likely going to be towards the end of January, beginning of February. So we'd love for you all to join. But in the meantime, from myself and everyone at Metro Village, and look forward to speaking to you maybe one-to-one to discuss the future.